What's going on, fam? This is KR Jones of the Off the Strength podcast, and I am here to tell you to like, listen, subscribe, and if you're feeling freaky, visit offthestrength.com. That's where you can go and get more information on us. That's where we can link, we can build, we can connect, and let's make this thing work.
I like it. It's professional, this guy. One take, mic drop.
It's one take.
That was the day. One take.
I'm on it today, baby.
How about you? I'm here to play. All right. So we're gonna come back in there.
I need you now. Found out that smoke, that clouds and shadows that keep leaking out your house. You throwing daggers at the crown, there's liquor falling from your mouth. I spit my silk to find the silver in the slivers in your couch. I'm coming out.
What's good, everybody? What's good? Welcome back to yet another episode of Off the Strength, where we're giving you the inside look into all things wellness culture. I'm a trainer called Tony, and of course, with me, I have a gentleman of extraordinary league.
KR Jones is in the building.
That's right, folks. We are back. And ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, listeners of all type from near and far, you are now in store for a treat because, Brother Jones.
What's the word?
It's that time of year again, my man.
Ho, ho, ho.
We've been dropping gems all year long. We got to make sure that we break down this catalog so that somebody, eventually someday, Kyle, can compile all these good messages into a solid amount of information. And that day is going to be today. That's right, folks. We are coming back in here dropping gems on our recap. Now, Kyle, this is our third annual recap episode, my man.
It's been 3 years.
And we have been bestowed so much good information that sometimes it comes across a little dense, man. So we got to make sure that we stretch this thing out and give people a chance to catch up. Now, this is how you going to get your life right coming into this next year. I know how a lot of people always like to come in with these high and lofty goals. Well, we have scoured the best of the best, and we have come together with some of the greatest information that we can. Now, Brother Jones,
what up?
I got to start off with how we started off this year, and I got to look back to my good brother, Power Malu and Joey Goodwin, and I got to bring up the episode, What Are You Fighting For?
Episode 170 for the listeners out there.
With our brothers from Overthrow Boxing in NYC. What are you fighting for? Now, man, these brothers are always a source for constant inspiration. I got to speak to my brother, Power Malu, specifically when I'm talking about this, and I don't know if you've been paying attention to what this man has been doing, but he has been feeding the community on the Lower East Side with his organic community fridge that he's kept in front of the gym for the longest time. They started that effort shortly thereafter this episode, but in this episode, you get to hear a lot about the richness that these two have shared throughout their lives, specifically when they're talking about their fathers and specifically when they're talking about how important it is to show up for people who are in positions that need their help. And they let that be known while they were talking about some of these indigenous communities.
Yeah, this was definitely a heartfelt episode because I remember vividly that my father was in the hospital as Power and Joey were both talking about their father's passing. So it was very sentimental. So go ahead and check this out for a little bit.
My father always worked in downtown New York City. So I was connected to Power a long time ago without actually even knowing I was connected to Power. My dad was one of the original bridge runners with Mike Sace and was actually the secretary for Mike's Hip Hop Museum. I didn't fall in love with wellness a long time ago. I fell in love with being an outsider. I fell in love with feeling like an underdog. Dad was always in New York. He was always bringing different things my way. I was at home with Mom a lot of the time, and Palm Beach is a pretty beautiful, beautiful place, but it has its demons as well. I would spend my summers in New York City. Dad would bring me up. He would go to a Dead Prez concert with Mike Sace, and he would bring me a poster, and you know, no one was seeing that in where I was from, right? I was just totally exposed to this different world. And I gravitated over when I was about 10 or 11 to West 4th Street. Needless to say, I had a little too much West 4th in my basketball game. So I was not very coachable when I was younger, which has always been a story of kind of my life. I ended up having a lot of different mentors, people that were not your typical type of mentors. One was a legend at West Fourth who was the MVP of the tournament multiple times. A good friend of mine named Sidney Smith, who got me into boxing, saw me running my mouth over at the court a few times and getting put in the trash can and tried to show me a few things.
That's important.
Ended up seeing some underground parties that were taking place in New York City. Ended up participating in those and these underground boxing parties. And this is in like 2012, 2013.
Okay.
Participated in them. I wouldn't quite say I was boxing at that time. I'd say I was mud wrestling or dry humping. But after that, I really wanted to learn what boxing was truly about. And so I ended up going to Mendez Boxing Street on 26th Street, which unfortunately just closed. I spent just a lot of time there, just like I did at West Fourth. And I met this older man. His name was Carlos Castillo. Carlito used to watch me and shake his head and say, "Who is this idiot?" And very similar to a Mr. Miyagi situation. And Carlito had a great pedigree in boxing. He was a trainer at the Times Square gym on 42nd Street, and his son won multiple Golden Gloves championships that he trained him for. And I always used to think, who is this mean old man? And eventually one day he called me over and tried to show me a few things. And I learned that boxing was not just about aggression or being able to, beat somebody up or, get into a bar fight. But boxing not only was a science, but it was a metaphor for how to live in a way of life.
Well, I was in the Lower East Side, born and raised in the Lower East Side. I'm a New Yorican. So my dad is from Santurce, Puerto Rico. My mom is from Camuy, Puerto Rico. They came to New York City. They met here. Dad was a boxer at an early age. He got into Customato's camp, which ended up being Empire Sports Club. Customato, people may know, is known for discovering Mike Tyson in the Catskill Mountains.
Most
but before that, Customato had a gym here on 14th Street. So my dad used to bring me to this gym when I was about 6, 7 years old, I remember. So that's where I first fell in love with it, because I remember watching him spar in a stinky, smelly gym, but it was raw. I was welcomed. I had a lot of old school cats just giving me little tips. They would pick up their hands and have me throw jabs and crosses. And so that was one aspect of it. And then the other aspect was watching my dad run around the track, the East River track, which is on 6th Street and FDR Drive. And he would take me to the track with him. So he would do laps. And then I would be able to kind of like run and do laps and think that, I'm ahead of him, and meanwhile, he's like quadruple lapping me, but it just gave me that feeling of like I'm participating in something, I'm having fun. And then I understood that my dad was training for something because I used to see him spar in the gym. And then I used to hear him talk about stories of when he used to fight, because by the time I was born, he kind of like had slowed down with actually getting into the ring professionally. It was more like he was just sparring and kind of training. But prior to that is when, he was part of the team, and Chewy Torres and all these old school dudes that I used to hear stories from. They used to tell me stories about my dad. He was kind of like a journeyman, and they used to just throw him into fights like with 2 days preparation, and just kind of like the mob was involved in it. So I used to hear stories from him about getting his life threatened, and that aspect of it I kind of didn't like about it. And so I understood why my mom and his mom kind of were afraid and helped to have him stop boxing. So by the time I was old enough to understand what he was doing, he was actually sneaking me into the gym with him and training on the side, because he had this dream that he would one day make a comeback. And he always used to tell me that, he's going to make a comeback and he's going to be, the first Puerto Rican heavyweight champion and all these things. And so I used to dream with him.
Now, we came out of that fight with the people from Overthrow, and we came right on into something else that I would imagine struck a little close to home, because we talked to somebody by the name of Dr. Yasmin Mumby. Kyle, do you remember Sister Yasmin Mumby?
Oh, you're the hometown hero, you know what I'm saying?
From
Be
Baltimore.
More, stand up, you know what I'm saying?
That's one of my favorite intros from this year, man. Just how, we really tried to come up with the soundtrack that tied to the listener and tied to the person that we were interviewing at the same time. Now, we hadn't had a chance to yet meet Yasmin, but through just the interaction that we connected to in that interview, you could see that we had a really resonant amount of energy, and her work and what she was doing with her audio stories that she's been telling was something that was really powerful. So I was excited to walk into this audio storytelling kind of excursion, somebody from that Fit For Us universe. So how did you feel about that?
I love that, one, not only was she from Baltimore, but she was putting in that work. And the audio memoir was something that we had to be introduced to, because that was something that I had never heard of before. So the intentionality that Yasmin spoke with, you could feel, and she was radiating from that Zoom call, man. So take a listen to this.
Be more BK?
You are elongating this whole intro process.
It was Nina's fault.
But Yasmin, we'd like to start the show by asking, where were you when you fell in love with this thing we call wellness?
I was a middle school social studies teacher in Park Heights in Baltimore, and I was worn out. I was incredibly burnt out. And in doing that work, I decided to become a community organizer, where I organized with parents and teachers and students, because we were just fed up with the situation in the schools, the lack of funding for building improvements, for curriculum, teacher pay, overworked hours. And in doing so much work with community, I wasn't really prioritizing myself at all. I never really seen that in our people, because I just came from a family that just did whatever they needed to do for each other. And I've just grown up seeing my parents work themselves so hard that, to really take time for your well-being and wellness wasn't something I was socialized to know that we could have access to without also the work we need to do with our people. So I found yoga because a friend of mine who I've known since I was 11 said, you got to do something else, because I see you're working really hard and maybe this could be helpful for you. And I'm pretty high strung, or at least I was more so back then. And I have anxiety. I don't hide that. I mean, my anxiety has a shadow side, and that side is being burnt out. The non-shadow side of anxiety is the long list of things I've been part of that have been very helpful for people. So I tried yoga at a studio that fortunately was donation-based, so I could afford it. And I fell in love with it. It was exactly what I needed at the time, and I wasn't the only one in the room, meaning the only Black person in the room, so that felt really good. And I just continued on that journey. That happened about, over 10 years ago, and I've been continuing to practice, and now I share it with folk, and I lead people in meditations, and it's opened up an access for me to find a way to value my vitality without destroying myself in the midst of it. And that's where I was when I found this thing called wellness in Baltimore.
Now, Yasmin, you unpacked a lot, and thank you for being so candid with, everything that you've shared with us. Now, for my brothers in the room here, they do not understand what Park Heights is, right? See, being as though that I am that Baltimore native, I'm originally from the east side, but my grandmother had a house on the west side, so like over in Liberty Heights and in that area up the street from
That's where
Mondawmin.
my family grew up.
So, yeah, we had a house over there, but I'm originally from the east side. Could you just paint a picture of what the school system looks like in Park Heights to give an idea to the listeners who might not know what that looks like or feels like?
Baltimore and the neighborhoods within it and the people who reside and thrive and survive are multidimensional. So I don't want people to walk away with a one-dimensional understanding of who we are, because we see plenty of unbalanced narratives of our people. And part of my work is to retip the scales and add more balance of dignity and wholeness and character to the people in that city. So, Park Heights has been for generations disinvested from. During my time as an organizer, we still had to organize for funding and stop cuts from the state to Baltimore City. So it's a neighborhood within a city that's had to try to survive given generations of disinvestment. And so as a result, you have people that are doing their best with what they can. And that is the neighborhood of which I chose to teach in, I chose to organize in. My family grew up off of Liberty Heights on the West Side. My father was a dentist, and he opened up a dental practice on the West Side. And my grandfather was a pediatrician, and he opened up his office on the West Side. So I'm just used to people in my family and community just doing what they need to do because we can't really rely on anybody else to help us because the help really hasn't come for over, 400 years. You have a bunch of persistent, ordinary people doing extraordinary things together. And through that, you just grow a sense of self and belonging and community that no one can take away from you. And you're pushing people in power to work with you in ways that really benefit community and don't, take away from just everyday living that just makes it really, really hard instead you're supplementing it and supporting each other. So how do I do that now? I do that through my writing. I mean, that is really why I write the way I do and as hard as I do, because I'm sick of the way people have written about us. And in particular, the audio documentary genre that you mentioned at the top is an attempt to go deeper beyond the surface level stereotypical storylines about Black people, specifically Black people in disinvested cities like Baltimore.
Yeah.
And so what I love about audio documentary is that, we go into layers, we go into the texture of voices and the sounds of life, and it's an amalgamation of experiences that don't necessarily come to the surface if someone else is writing about it two-dimensionally. You're not reading it on paper, you're filling it in your ears with the sounds of life outside of, what someone else could provide you from their own lens. It's deeper, it's richer.
Yeah, man, I guess we might have been in a little bit of a yoga bag, Kyle.
Oh, you was going to bring that up? Because I was going to bring up my personal favorite yoga episode.
This is your favorite yoga episode.
That being episode 174, Comedic Yoga. Stay woke.
Stay woke.
Featuring Shakira Kelly.
Shout out to Shakira Kelly, man. Shakira came in, and again, this is somebody that I met on Clubhouse, bro. So first of all,
is that even a thing anymore?
I don't even know what's going on.
Jeez.
But Shakira had Clubhouse turned up with her yoga room that she was going through, man. And I'm talking about there was thousands of people in this room, and I was like, this for somebody who's not invested in talking on the microphone all the time to have this much courtship on that. It was something that was fly as hell, man. And just instantaneously from the time that she walked into the room, and this was one of our first return episodes to be recorded
one of
inside.
Those first in person after the vid and all that other stuff.
Man, it was a vibe. So I had to really find that energy to stay woke through the whole episode like she was blessing us with, man.
Now, for the listeners, before you tap into it, this was the best way to describe it, that Jill Scott, long walk in the park.
She definitely was that.
The education, relaxation. We did all the rhymations.
There was a lot of schemes.
There was a lot of rhyme patterns in that episode specifically. So go back for a good laugh. That will always take you to the next level.
Shout out to Shakira Kelly.
I'm going to take it way back. I'm an 80s baby.
Okay.
So I'm going to take it back to my girl, FloJo.
Okay.
The track star.
Oh, yes. We know
Beautiful
Flo.
Track star with her nails. Oh, my gosh. So I watched her in the early 90s, and I saw her on television. I was like, Mom, I want to do that. And so I began running track at 7, and I did it for 7 to 9. And then I stopped, and I did it again from 12 to 13. But that was my initial introduction to fitness or wellness, sports. And I loved it, running with the team, the 4x1, competing, building your strength, my muscle, all that. I loved it. And I was like, oh, I'm addicted. Plus, I would imagine that I was FloJo every time I was on the track. So for me, it was I was in my own little movie in my head as a child, and I loved it. It was awesome.
Leaving them in the dust out there.
You know what I mean?
But okay, so that's the inception of where you were going. Okay,
yes,
and then we got into the running world. Okay, and what was the maturation of that process?
Okay, so when I was a kid, it was fun to run. But when I turned 12, 13, I don't know if it was because of puberty, but I was like, this is too much work. You want me to run a mile under this time, and you want me to jump on some hurdles. It's too much.
That's a lot.
So I made the transition into dance. And then from dance, I actually went into yoga. So that happened actually during my middle school years. And by the time I got to high school, I was doing yoga. So yoga and dance.
And where were you while that was taking place?
I was in Las Vegas at the time, so shout out to Las Vegas Academy.
Okay, righteous.
Before Performing Arts High School. Yes. So we didn't have any sports. It was Performing Arts High School. It was like Fame, the TV show. So we had, art and dance and orchestra. So I did dance. I did theater and jazz and ballet and stuff like that.
Okay, I see that. So there's a love of rhythm. There's a movement coming across inside here.
All the time. You have to move the body.
I like this.
Yes.
I like this. Fellas, how you feeling on this story that we're setting up so far?
I mean, it sounds like movement is the key for life, truly.
It really is.
Come on now.
Can you just unpack what got you into yoga aside from originating in track and then migrating to dance? Like, what was that introduction that set that up for you?
Ooh, well, so like I said, I went into track and then dance and then yoga. And in dance, yoga was used as like a warm-up. And so I was like, when I first did it, I was like, okay, this is a challenge. And I am being competitive, but I'm not being competitive with anyone else in the room. I'm being competitive with myself. Whereas track, it's like, no, you are purposely being competitive with other people. And so I liked that because it was like, how far do I think I can go? How flexible am I? And that became a challenge for me, like every day when I went into class. And from there, again, yoga is mental. A lot of people think it's physical, but really it's a mental practice. And I think that's what hooked me was the mental challenge and like the mental talk that happens when you're putting yourself in a challenging stretch and your muscles are screaming at you, but your will is saying like, I can do this, I can hold, I can breathe, I can relax. And your body is fighting you. And just that internal struggle, that internal conversation I was already having in high school. And I think that's what like kind of got me like, oh, what is this? Like, what is this whole mental thing about when I'm doing something so physical? A lot of growth has definitely happened. First, I was really competitive and super hard on myself because I was coming from a perfectionist point of view. I have high standards for myself. So I studied hard, I worked hard, etc. And I took that to the mat. And that's not necessarily what you do in yoga. You don't necessarily need to do yoga hard, but sometimes the hardest thing could be surrendering. And that became the challenge for me. It's like, where can I soften my edges, not be so hard with myself? And so now I'm much more compassionate with myself and understanding. A great lesson was learned in that is because I tell people all the time, are you your own best friend? Like, can you take yourself out on dates? And this whole relationship with myself definitely came from yoga just because of all the mental talk that happens. And it's like, well, if you say you're this person, then why aren't you doing this, etc. And that spilled off of the mat into my life. So yeah, I would say like, just realizing that you don't have to be so hard on yourself. Be your own best friend, be compassionate. No one's perfect, and that's okay. Like, you don't have to be perfect, but be compassionate with yourself. We're so hard on ourselves. And I learned that compassion has been like one of the strongest suits that I've like acquired during my yoga. Just starting with my practice, honestly, it was a physical thing for me. I was like, ooh, I can do the splits and like I can do a headstand and like this is really cool. But again, like the mental chatter. So from that mental dialogue that I would have with my body and literally like with my mind, I found in a space, gosh, this sounds like I took shrooms and I did not take shrooms. But
we're not knocking shrooms. Yeah, we're not mad at
No, I love shrooms.
That's what I was about to say.
I love shrooms. Plant medicine all day is very good.
See, we're going to be friends.
But I'm saying, what I'm about to say sounds a little out there. But in that dialogue between my mind and my body, I found like God. Because it was just, I don't know, it's like I felt closer to spirit when I became more intimate with myself, and yoga allowed me to do that. When you really sit down and question why you think the way you think, why you do what you do, why you hang out with who you hang out with, and you really start unpacking and doing the healing, like that's for me, like that, I was like, okay, I have to stick to this. And I saw the changes in my own life. I was able to be, like I said, more compassionate with myself, more compassionate with other people, more understanding. I didn't take things so personally anymore. I was able to see like the bigger picture, et cetera. And that all came from yoga. And I just wanted to say, because you said that, I like to have enlightened conversations, which I do. But that's exactly why I made my company Yoga, which stands for Your Opportunity for Growth and Ascension, because I really want to remind people of their own greatness within. You know what I mean? Like, people oftentimes look outside themselves to solve their problems. And I want to remind them that we are whole, we are complete, and to look inward. If you have, any issues or any problems, you can look inward and find the answer.
So we're moving from the need for validation to we're making the declaration.
Ooh, yes.
That we are whole from the beginning.
Yes.
I'm here for this.
Declaration.
I like
Hello.
this. We slid into the next side with Jim Bay out there. I'm talking about Brianna Cummings. and we had a whole conversation around how she transitioned from that track star. She was a runner. She's a track star, Kyle.
She gonna run away when it gets hard.
That's exactly what happened. But she ran right on into an establishment that we are all too familiar with. And this establishment at that time was in the process of celebrating her sister for what she was able to do. Now, there was some forewarning inside here as to how this relationship was going to go through. Now, Kyle, I'm going to fast forward through this a little bit and let her tell her story and her justice, man. What did Bree give you a little bit of light about in this episode, man?
I think the gem that she was talking about specifically was probably having parents that were from a Caribbean background and not realizing the importance of wellness and them not believing like, oh, you're just going to train people the rest of your life? Like you're not going to, be a doctor or a lawyer. So I think fighting that and continuing to follow her passion was the real gem that, was coming through in that regard.
When you felt it was transactional, right? When it was just, if I'm not performing, I'm not doing this, did that turn your love away from track? Or was it more of just these people that are in my life?
Yeah, it completely turned me off because it was like, I worked all these years, all these weekends I spent as a kid going to track meets. I didn't get to play. I didn't get to go over to my friend's house. I was training. I was running. And this is how it's going to end, So I got into the mindset where it was like, I'm just going to run hard enough to go to the places that I want to go. And that was Penn Relay. That was our spring break Puerto Rico trip. I was just doing the bare minimum for a long time. And the only reason why I stayed on the team was because of my teammates. Like, I knew that I could get them places, especially on a relay. Like, yeah, I'm going to put my best foot forward so that y'all can move on. And it kind of turned into, I'm not running for myself, I'm running for y'all. So, unfortunately, the end of my track career doesn't have a happy ending. I was just going through the motions at the end, which is why, like, when I think back, I'm, like, so surprised that I'm here.
Yeah.
Because I left that college saying, like, I am so done with this. Like, don't want to do this ever again.
Brianna, the things that you often love in life will test you and see what you're made of in some way, shape, or form. And sometimes in that test, when you hit that bottom end and you kind of get to that burnout kind of phase, which it sounds like you were getting inside there, you find an opportunity to meet yourself. And inside that opportunity to meet yourself, what I see is somebody that presents very confident, very driven, very purpose-focused and intentional in everything that they come across inside there. So I would say, might not have had a happy ending, but I could see the results of that ending permeating everything that you're doing here today.
Yeah.
In a very clear way. And it seems that the intentionality is the thing that comes through for me very clearly. Where does that come from in your story? What informs that for you?
I don't know. Maybe it's like the oldest child thing, where you want to be the best example you can for your younger sister and your younger cousins. I feel like I was always kind of self-driven. I come from a family where they were like, oh, you're not doing this? Where do you expect to get in life? Like, my grandparents want me to be a doctor. They want me to be a teacher. They want all these secure jobs. So especially when I came to them and I told them, yo, this is what I do. I'm in fitness. They're like, well, what are you supposed to do? Train people for the rest of your life? Like, that's not going to get you anywhere. So I, turn inward. It's a feeling that drives me when I'm in those classes or, when I'm talking to people afterwards and they're telling me how they feel. Like, that feeling put me here and it's kept me here. And it's very strong. In these last 2 years, like, these have been the first years that I've experienced passion, I guess, and purpose.
Yeah.
For what I do.
So the next one that really jumped out, and it's kind of one of my favorite types of episodes, and I look forward to doing more of these in the year to come, was our State of the Union episode, man. And this one was all about defining your value. So we actually brought Bree back, and alongside Bree, we had Janelle and 3-time guest on the podcast, Purcell Duggar, my man. So I know we had everybody coming in from this organization at the same time. We had a chance to talk about real transparently what value means inside of our industry. Now, you know how passionately I feel about this topic in particular. So the fact that we had somebody who was a marketer come in, somebody who was invested in starting their own ad agency inside of wellness, and then somebody who has been featured in a bunch of ads at the same time, all having a real transparent conversation.
Now, another thing to note was, again, the comedy that took place in this episode. You know, we're not stand-up comedians or nothing, but I promise you're going to be in for a good laugh as you pick up these gems from these people that aren't only in the industry, but have made moves in the industry.
Imagine someone quoting someone $5,000 for something that they know at bare minimum is valued at probably $100,000.
I don't have to imagine that. If I am dying of thirst and you offered me a thimble full of water, that's the best thing that I had in my life. You know why I don't have to imagine that? Because listen to what has happened in all of the music industry. I've been screaming about this for the longest time.
Yeah.
Hey, these artists who seem like, oh, this is a millionaire crying about something. It's like, do you know how much money they made off of that person? They say it transparently.
Here we are.
So, Janelle, in your talk on Black Div, do you speak about, let's say there is a person who doesn't have access to cool people like P and you. Do you talk about where your research may start and what you can do on your own before you get into these deals and get into partnerships and possible sponsorships? No.
That's a complete sentence.
That's not true.
That's a whole set of sentences right there.
No.
Show's over.
I do.
Nah.
I do. I do a little bit, but, and this might sound like a cop-out answer, but there's so much information out there on Google, honestly. I mean, you know, don't try to Google your symptoms if you're not feeling well, but like how to understand your value, there are things that exist. So I encourage people that don't have the resources to hire a strategist.
Join Fit for Us.
They should join Fit for Us. We've got a Slack channel. We have general body meetings. We have open dialogue about these things. So just join us. That's one solution. But I mean, unfortunately, you just kind of have to put in, the work has to go in somehow.
Exactly.
Right? And so it's either time resources. If you don't have the financial resources to hire an expert, it's the time resources, but it's so worth it. The ROI is huge. When we're talking about somebody who was going to take $5,000. Yeah, that's crazy. Like, that's worth a few hours of doing the due diligence of understanding where is the market, where is the industry on compensation for the types of things, you know, I'm being offered or the opportunities I want to pursue.
Absolutely.
And if I'm being frank, a lot of y'all not there yet, right? Like, a lot of folks are not at the place where they can legitimately go in here and warrant those kind of things. But I think the beauty of Fit for Us is that A, will help you get there, and B, if you're not sure if you're there, whether you are or not, we're going to make sure that you get what you need to either get there or get the most out of where you are, right? So it doesn't really matter about where you are at, where you feel like you're at. There's a place for you to eat and do well and thrive. You know what I mean? You just got to pull up. Did you listen to your whole episode?
I did.
He edited the fuck out of that shit.
My petty is strong.
Yo!
My petty is strong. Do not.
The
first couple of times,
it was like, I need all the bad yum yum. I want to know if you were freaking out. I need all the bad yum yum.
I was dying. I was like, oh, he was serious.
I need every bad yum.
I went out of my way to be
CTC is lit.
Brother Jones, I had the pleasure of bringing in friend of the show, first person that put me on stage at the Samsung A37 event space, and then transitioned into a friend and a pal and a confidant. We had the fixer, Lauren L. Santiago, come on to the show, man. And this is one of the people that I've learned in a small amount of time to really know and love and appreciate, man, for the way that she sees the world and the way that she brings her artistry to find other artists and turn the volume up a little bit on them. I was really appreciative to share a little bit of the insight as to what makes LL and why she's a part of the squad and why she's somebody who would do something like when in the middle of our quarantine recording sessions was like, yo, y'all sound crazy and I know y'all have talent. Here's some microphones, here's some recording stuff. Keep the show going. Keep that energy going and give you that little bit of confidence. It's like, you have something here that means something to people. I know it's not there yet, but don't give up on this. And those people are the people that, you know, I hold to the highest esteem, man. What you take away from this one?
Man, I was just happy again to have someone like you just introduced, like a friend of ours, to actually be here and celebrate the people in our inner circle. Like you mentioned, just being able to have that mindset of like, this person has talent, to be able to see it and put it on stage. You gotta appreciate that.
Here's El Santiago, the fixer.
I will say riding with Night Riders especially, like, I know it's their mission to really provide, you know, a safe space. And legit, like, whenever I'd pull up, you didn't have people like trying to holler and any of that. It literally became like a family, and you really just felt like everybody was included and celebrated, and everybody was just like about, you know, one singular mission of just riding, getting fresh air, having a good time, and then, you know, pushing the pace a little bit. Everybody's great, and it's always a vibe. So, yeah.
Our crew is extensive, gents, is what we're trying to let you know over on this side.
You know, this summer in particular, especially with the Night Riders, felt like the closest thing that I had touched in a childhood friendship. Mm-hmm. You know, when like you were a kid and there was a meeting spot, everybody would meet there, whoever would come was new, yo, what's up? And we kick it, but like continuously, like week after week, somebody would send a flyer out and then everybody's pulling up. And that community vibe of just bikes alone was something that like I truly cherished, that, you know, I can't say that I would have had this pandemic not happened, you know, and to walk away with people that like, I didn't know from a can of paint last year, but now like y'all like fam.
No, but real talk though, like 2020 obviously was a hard year. And I think we've all equally expressed this to each other, where truly like my best moments of last year were with you guys. So it's like, you know, there's even that Rockaway ride we did. It was just like, it's just so like liberating, I think. And it creates a bond and a sense of community that everybody was craving and needed just for our own sanity. So it's truly, you know, special.
A sentiment that is felt for sure. I'm thinking back through the trip that we took up to Storm King, or the trips that we ride out, and
that might have been best day of 2020.
I'm going to go ahead and tell you, unapologetically, my love for our core group is unwavering. Lauren, you have this ability to pull people from all different walks of your life and put them together, and they automatically connect, right? It's like, oh, you cool with Lauren? All right, cool. I'll let this slide. If it wasn't her, I'll be looking at you a little different. So that curation extends to the people. How do people feel like they can honor that same level of attention that you give them, the same level of appreciation? How often are you getting that back? And how can we kind of curate a situation that we move in that direction?
I mean, I appreciate you even having me, I think, on this show. But honestly, like, I'm most passionate about being able to connect the dots. And like, if I'm in a position where, let's say 837, for example, if I'm in a position where I have the power to give somebody in my network a platform to shine, I will do it. For me, it's everybody eats. And that's what I live by all day, every day, right? So when I got the position as business director for 837, managing all the production and the programming that year, and we launched like a Galaxy Innovator series, which was focused on entrepreneurship, I was able, because they trusted me so much to make decisions, and like every event that I was leading, like it was like a home run. I was able to bring in people who I thought, like in my own friend network, where I'm like, they're doing big things. I think they deserve a platform, you know? And when I'm able to see that and like give them that stage to really just, you know, I'm not changing anything they do if I'm being able to power that. Let me say that, because I don't want to take credit for anybody's success, but if I'm able to help in that success and in their goals and in that visibility, at the end of the day, I'm happy. I go home and I'm like, that was completely rewarding, and now I'm fulfilled, and then that's it. Like, just being able to see that, I think, is enough for me.
And then after, as if it couldn't get any better, we had our first big time push, Kyle. We got a chance to touch a little bit of that history in hip hop, my man. I'm telling you, this is one of the seminal moments of the show, because I think it started to make everything snap and click together, where we got a little bit of that early Dipset energy to be on our show. You want to let people know why we had that, man?
It was early Dipset energy because we got a chance to interview the brother Arsonist, man, and he is the legendary producer from Heatmakers, who is responsible for
damn near all of my childhood greatest hits from Dipset with Joel's, from Cameron and Jim Jones, all the above. We also got to sit down with Hills, friend of the show, and Russ, who is the brother of the late Fred the Godson. So we were able to have that health and hip-hop merger conversation.
It's the quintessential backbone of why we exist, man, and it was beautiful to be able to share that with these two brothers, especially coming off the top of the year that Hills and Russ had. You know, unfortunately, again, rest in peace, Fred the Godson. And just hearing how much wellness as a practice resonated in all these brothers' lives was something that was special. So I can't wait to share this again. Here it is. It's Been Promised, featuring Arsonist, Hills, and Russ.
When you look at, again, Love, right? There's some dope records and probably some historic, iconic records that may have been done by, you know, an email swap. You know what I mean? Like you hear the record and it just sparks and it's the right record. But that's like a great one-night stand that turned into a weekend versus when you have a bond with a co-creator. That's a relationship. That's where that magic is. That's where the consistency is. You know, it's easy to have one banger, boom, but to continuously just drum out phenomenal shit, that's trust.
The best way I could put it is that I make great music with anybody that views music as therapy. You understand? If you view music as therapy, I can work with you. If you do music to make money, I can't really fuck with you like that because our goals are different. You know what I mean? Like our ideals are different at that point. Because even though I make money from music, I don't make music to make money, if that makes sense to you.
Hell yeah.
You understand? Like,
yeah.
I make music because it's therapy for me. Because like when I'm having a fucked up day and I turn my machine on and I make whatever I make, I feel better. My mind is at ease. I feel calmer. You understand? Like if I'm angry at somebody and I turn my machine on and make music, the anger subsides. So for me, it's therapy, man. If somebody doesn't view it as therapy, then it's hard for me to align with you creatively.
Right.
Remember, this is the conversation we had. I said, look, nowadays when you buy music, right, what do you really buy? What tangible object do you hold in your hand nowadays? Nothing, right?
Right.
So with that being said, you're not paying for music. You're paying for a feeling. You want that feeling repetitively, so you bought it.
Right.
You understand? So if a song doesn't give you any type of feeling, then what is that? What did you buy? You didn't buy anything. All you did is waste your money. You understand? You bought white noise if something doesn't give you a feeling. But when it gives you a feeling, you can justify spending that $9.99 or streaming it 45 times a day or whatever you're doing. You understand? But without that feeling, we're listening to dead air.
Man, Ace is one of the people that is a radiant ray of sunshine whenever she gets on the phone, steps into a room, and somebody that I know you actually had a chance to go back and connect with after we had this interview. So you want to tell people a little bit about what to expect in this one?
Like you mentioned, man, Ace is definitely a breath of fresh air. A lot of positivity just radiating out of her. She been getting to that work lately. I don't know if you've
seen her.
You've seen on
She's kickboxing, doing all kind of fun stuff.
She's been getting some full body karate in for sure. So shout out to her. But this episode in particular was, I think, very captivating just because we got into her story.
Yeah.
And really understanding who she was and how she has been through a lot of trauma, but realizes that she can turn that into joy, and her light being sharing that with people. So I think when you really unpack her joy coming from trauma and her going through that transition, you can really see that in this episode.
Like, oh my gosh, the more I'm able to make space in my heart, the more I'm able to really stand tall and allow myself to be seen. And then people really want to see me. And I'm giving the people around me permission to, to operate in that same way and not pretend and not have moments of, oh my gosh, so if I allow them to see me, what will they think when I have a bad day? And not worrying about being judged. Not worrying about how my past is being judged, not worried about, what I might be doing wrong or right, just existing. And what I noticed in the heart openers is, my God, the amount of love that is in my body and amount of love that I just exude on a daily basis was just shut down for a long, long time. And so having the wherewithal now, having the teachers, having the guidance, having the group support to trust fall back, literally and sometimes figuratively. That was probably the biggest game changer for me. And it didn't, like I said, it didn't come with ease, but once I really fell into, anytime I come into a camel pose, it got easier and easier, right? And so that's life. That's when we're going through anything that is challenging at first, I realized, is stay with it. So stay with love, stay with love, stay with love, stay open to it, and stay open to the process of opening, because you're going to be seen, and that's okay. And if you don't want to be seen, then that's fine too. But for me, I knew that I had work to do here. So me stepping onto a mat for the first time in a hot yoga class, there's no accident that I thought to myself, I could teach too. I could do this too. And it was just like, all right, either you're going to do it or you're not going to do it. So the universe is having it figured out for you already. So you're either going to fall into this direction or you're going to continue blocking your blessings and blocking other people from learning from me at the same time.
To share in the art of storytelling with a multidisciplinary storyteller, I'm talking about the brother Kofi, man.
That was a powerful episode for many different reasons, and I'm just happy that we were able to sit down on the couch and chop it up with the man, from his story of how he got on to, being able to connect with somebody like Michael K. Williams, rest in peace, all the different things from the running community that he started and the reason that they run. The episode was heavy, man.
I was really inspired to see that we can find inspiration to somebody who's already an established filmmaker, somebody who's already been established in telling all different types of digital media stories and taking that forward in a different direction. Sharing some of the conversations after that with that brother, man, I know that, it's really true what they say about that steel sharpening steel, man. So here's a little bit more from our brother Kofi.
There's a difference in rapping and the words having meaning to it. And when I'm running, the words have to have a meaning, has to have a purpose. And that's why a lot of times it's Tupac, because there are a lot of days where I don't feel like running and I need something to motivate me. So that can be Dear Mama, that can be All Eyes on Me, that could be anything just to get me out, whether it's 30 degrees or, 0 degrees, or if it's too hot, because in the summertime it becomes too hot. And that's where I benefit from running at nighttime. But I still look like I just came out the beach when I'm finished. But music plays a major role depending on how you feel. We spoke of the Marvin Gaye look for my running the protest. That's exactly where I got it from. A lot of people wouldn't know that. Brother. So immediately when you said that, I knew, okay, he's on top of it. That was my purpose, because, what's going on. I saw the documentary on how they didn't want him to come out with that song. And he wrote it.
The whole thing.
Yeah, the entire thing. And it was basically about, is that everything that's going on still today?
Present day.
And what he was rocking was that red beanie. So I took that, I borrowed that from him. And it was like, look, this is me. Like, I was already doing that, but now that if this running the protest goes any further, then this is where I got it from. And that's to pay homage to him, because he already saw it back then.
Man, shout out to Ricky Shubio for, Inspired Daily, for having him pull up again for the second time. And that day, Ricky definitely had an agenda.
Ricky took him to church.
Ricky took him to church to let you know what was happening.
I'm all about duality.
Okay.
It's all about dualism. It's all about the balance for me. So there is just as much on each side for me, man. Like, I was so focused on elevating my growth to get, I'm not going to say past certain things. And all these are jokes. Like, let's keep it real. But I've realized that, like, moderation and balance is so much of my focus and my different points of wellness now that it's so much of everything. So that's why when I'm on what I'm on right now, like, people will see me, and it even started to translate and sprinkle into the work, because brothers is like, yo, well, you was heavy on the sneakers, and now it's home aesthetic. You out here talking about, I've been telling people to go, all throughout last year, I've been telling people to go to therapy. I've been telling all people to go to therapy. I sat down with my pops, I was like, yo, Pop, go to therapy. And he was like, yo, why? Because your mom? Because we lost your mom? I was like, nah, not off mom. I was like, yo, bro, like, listen, you had to get out the crib at 16. What traumas you got that you ain't never addressed?
Mm-hmm.
That may have slightly trickled down to me. That I'm going to snap, but I also don't want you to give to the grandkids when I eventually have them. So it's just like, oh, man, so you can live the best life you can live. And it's not for somebody to solve your problems or things like that. yo, talk through something with somebody that you may have never considered.
Shout out to reminisce in that episode, You Are Love, because again, that was one of those conversations that was needed on both sides just for healing and understanding.
First of all, you're never alone. You're never alone. And although, you know, you might be like navigating this journey, you know, for the first time, it's not, you know, there's been others, you know, navigating similarly. And so trust that you're going to meet people along the way. They're going to support you and to remember always that you're loved.
I want to bring you to one of my favorite episodes. And that was episode 203, Sex and Power, Respect.
Shout out to Michelle Hope herself.
Michelle Hope is someone that you just never really know what you're going to get.
As a dear friend.
As a dear friend, you just got to sit back, relax, put your seatbelt on tight, because you just never know what you're going to get. And that day in particular was when we got caught in the rain on the way to the studio. So we had on matching fits that apparently looked like a pajama jammy jam.
The Wu-Tang is forever.
Wu-Tang is for sure forever and for the kids, but Michelle Hope did not disappoint. She did deliver as she came in and dropped some gems on us that day.
And she stayed for 2 episodes.
Stayed for 2 episodes and was impactful on both.
Hell yeah.
Listen, can we talk about 2020? What the VOC? And I spell that DIVOC. So COVID backwards is DVOC. So what?
We just got hit with the deep science. I didn't even see all of that.
What the VOC was 2020.
All right, so hold on. I'm going to peel it back a little bit. I'm going to hit the rewind. Michelle, for some of our new people who might not know your full glory and everything that is that you have been up to, can you please let our good listeners know who you are, where you're from, and what it is that you represent, my love?
Listen, I'm your favorite unapologetic sexologist. Giving you all things sex, love, relationships. And while people make assumptions that sexology is all about popping that pussy and, getting that good backstroke in. Hey now. Really, what I look at is the sexuality of social justice and how sexuality impacts the intersections of our experience with oppression.
Speaking of impactful, man, we always got to bring up the good brother Flex. I mean, he is the longest running guest on the show.
We got to pay him the next time he's here.
We got a CTC for the brother Flex.
Super Flex.
But Flex is always somebody that's going to bring in his unique brand of inspiration and motivation and also his insight. And he got to share that a little bit after coming off of a little bit of a rocky year himself.
Like, I feel as though gratitude is a huge space for you to be able to understand where you want to go and, like, really take inventory of what you have, because it accounts for everything you have. And once you're able to give gratitude for that, you now have a solid platform to stand on to, like, really get your base and, like, take that next step to the next level. So, like, gratitude, I feel as though is that entry point. And then once you start, like, building that up and being able to understand, like, what network or, like, what utilities you have before you, you're able to utilize them a whole lot more.
As we jump back around, man, I got to think about episode 210, only because that was when we got to interview the Anthony Anderson on the drums, that is. Not
Anthony Anderson on the drums.
Anthony Anderson on the drums. Not that other one you may know, who we
also came across paths with other Anthony Anderson.
Paths with him. But we're not talking about him. We're talking about the Anthony Anderson on the drums, in which, man, playing loud enough for my people to hear me was too small of a sentiment to even say how good of an episode that was, man. So I just want to appreciate that brother Anthony for that.
The journey started really when I was 9. Born and raised in the Bronx, stomping grounds, of course. My mother and father, they're both not with me right now, but they paved the way for me. My dad gave me the opportunity and just really showed me visually how to have the passion for drumming.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for just seeing him in the living room rocking out to his records, vinyls, in the living room just jamming to everything, old school, everything. So that's really where my family comes from. Old school, R&B, hip hop, all of that. falls in line from there. And if it wasn't for just seeing him interacting, just loving the music, made me just really like, he saw me tapping on surfaces, pillows, pots and pans, and he was like, yo, you're going to be a drummer one day.
Man.
And the rest is history.
The dynamic duo that is Paris and Alicia of the BK Yoga Club, man. So that is that balancing both ratchet and righteous, and that's exactly what that episode took you to. Yeah.
Wait, I'm sorry. Paris is literally humming like Negro spirituals in the background. Like, this is wild right now. I'm like, what is going down?
This is weird. I appreciate you put a mic in front of somebody. She's ready to go.
I need the Palo Santo. Let's bring the vibes out right now.
I'm here for this. What you don't understand is that, like, we were already singing in the last episode.
You were? See?
Yes. We was already here for this.
We still vibing off the last episode. That's
We've been trying to get karaoke started in this space for the longest time.
I would love it. I am beyond karaoke. My voice ain't good, but I would love it.
She's like, no. I do shows. I love that. It's like booking information in bio.
Link in bio.
Please get it right. I love that. Yes.
I got stories, but I ain't gonna talk about it right now.
Listen, all right, get that Prosecco going back around. We're gonna get to these stories about pass the Prosecco around. Pass it one more time. Pass it one more time.
People that are responsible for the sounds that come across on these mics that you would hear at Newsstand Studios, coming live from the block of Rock Brother Jones. And this is where I got to bring my brother, my actual brother, and the homie Slim Charles in on the set and talk a little bit about their music journey, and it gave a little insight as to why the show sounds the way it does, man.
Again, that behind the curtain peek inside to the mind of a producer and the inspiration that they pull from and what allows them to continue to create. Or, like our young brother Caution, always be creating. You know, the name of that tape. So I appreciated them for coming through.
He has the musical touch, and he put me onto a lot of good sounds, so I had a good eclectic taste of sounds. So that's what led me to following some music. I love it. And then seeing him DJ obviously is extremely motivating. So I was like, you know, I want to do something too, like my brother. So
man, you know what? You came out all right, kid, you know?
It's the polished version.
Yeah, you know,
I would still pay money to see this guy on the ones and twos.
Listen, I was here with it, man.
Getting the party hype. What was B. Haynes' name again?
DJ Vita.
DJ.
That wasn't you?
I was. That drop was a little shaky.
I remember the V with the headphones on it.
V for Vendetta.
The red.
Yeah, I remember that.
Put some respect on my drop.
What was B. Haynes' name?
B. Haynes was Be Conscious, which
Be
was a
Caution.
different. Listen, our rap
Caution
names
B.
is Caution.
All together.
Cautious. The names is a little shaky.
All right. It don't matter.
So we're going to pass this mic over to Slim Charles.
Slim Charles.
Where were you, sir, when you got introduced to this hip-hop element?
First of all, I would like to say I wish I had a sibling who had a deep library. I had an older sister, and she put me onto a lot of music, but it was more like when she was in high school, she was into like Nirvana, more hardcore 9 Inch Nails.
Oh, that's my bag too, man.
That's what I was going to say. So is he. It's like,
I listen to everything.
Okay, yeah, but she was a little pigeonholed in that, so I didn't really get a heavy dose. Like, she was giving me Dave Matthews CDs and shit like that. Probably not until junior in college is when we started really like freestyling a lot before going out, and that just led to like aggressive searches for beats.
Definitely want to talk about the brother PV in the neighborhood. Now, I was introduced to the brother PV at Photodome a while ago. I ended up buying a skateboard from him and only got to, scratch the surface on his story a little bit. But when we got a chance to sit down and have him in person, the gems in which he dropped again on sticking to what he knows and allowing the constraint to find his creativity.
I pretty much ended up like a weekly column where I would like contribute every single week. I was doing written articles and I was also contributing a lot of the photography. That even put me in certain places that you realized was valuable, but you still didn't get the actual compensation. So, for example, I remember I was doing an article, actually, like one of French Montana's managers had contacted me. Shout out to Lola. This is back in the day, maybe like 5, 6, 7, 8 years now. But yeah, so she contacted me because she wanted to get an article in Franklin 5-1. So working for the magazine, they realized that it was a valuable platform and they wanted me to basically come out and document what they was doing. This is around the time when Chinks Drugs was still alive. rest in peace, Chinks.
Rest in peace.
And she invited me to a video shoot to shoot some photos. Later, I would ended up writing an article about Chinks drugs because he was just up and coming at the time. And just knowing that, like, yo, if she wants me here, then it got to be of a certain value, you know what I'm saying? And just like, long story short, it was like a little cold, like it wasn't wintertime, maybe like late fall. And French Montana and Chinks was like chilling in a Rolls Royce. They had a Rolls Royce on the set. And when they actually exited the car to go shoot their scenes, Lola asked me if I just wanted to sit in the back of the car just to like warm up or just like, to catch my breath or whatever. And I'm in the back of a Rolls Royce. I'm just in the back of a Rolls Royce. Like, I'm in the back of French Montana's Rolls Royce. And at the time, I remember I had to leave that shoot and I ended up getting on the train and I was like scrapping for change, like to get it on the train, like, you know what I'm saying, just to get back home. And it's like I went from being in a Rolls Royce to like not even having enough money to get back on the train. I don't even know if she realized that I was like scrapping for change, like, you know what I'm saying? But it was just one of those mental situations where it's like, yo, I'm here and I realized that there is value in what I'm doing, but I wasn't being compensated at the time.
Brother Ja Washington, because he is still moving and shaking the whole uptown with these kettlebells over on his side, man.
Being in finance was amazing the first 5 years. I was learning a lot. I was making good money. I was happy. And then it got monotonous. It got boring. The raises and bonuses weren't really, it didn't matter. The money didn't really matter. Money has never made me happy, but I knew I could do more. And so I was like, yeah, this isn't it. And I had started training maybe 2012 and just a hobby, a couple of friends like we talked about until we started the boot camps on Saturdays. And then 5 people became 8, became 10, became 15. And then I'm like, So now, I got a couple PT clients from it. So I started doing a little bit of math. And I'm like, well, I could probably quit this job, maybe, right? But I was also nervous, so it took me a bit.
Man, from there, I got 2 honorable mentions, and then the last one, I promise you, the last one that we're going to talk about. Now, the 2 honorable mentions are my brother, Mitch Sennett, right? We had to shout him out, and we got to shout out Maurice Summers, solely because those were my 2 OGs. 2 people that I learned foundational knowledge from in this wellness industry to be the man that I am today. Gotta go back and listen to them episodes, and they are my personal friends, much like this person that I want to mention as well. We got to interview Bo. Just Bo.
Bo knows.
Bo knows. No, not even a no. Just Bo.
Bo Paloma.
Right? Life is artistry, and we got a chance to sit down with her. She's a yogi. She's a mother. She's an overall creative, and I think when we got to tap into just a little bit of her mindset, we got to see things through her lens a little bit.
So if you had to give our listeners out there some advice off the strength.
Don't do it. Can I say that? Don't do it.
That's the advice right there. You heard it first, folks. Whatever you thought you was doing,
don't do it.
Don't.
No, but seriously, they call it, did I let you finish your question first?
No, let me set it up again for you.
Sorry about that.
Let's reel it back. For the listeners out there, right? If you had to give them some advice to put their best foot forward off the strength, right? That advice could be life advice. That advice could be motherly advice. It could be Bo advice. It could be whatever advice. What would you say helped you and was a defining moment in life to get you to where you are today?
The simplest thing is sprinkle a little fuck it on it.
Yes. Put it on a shirt. I need that.
Fuck it on it. That's probably the thing that has got me through everything.
My last honorable mention is going to go to the good brother Winston Peters, because Winston always comes in, gives us that knowledge that we need to make sure that we set our businesses up in the most sturdy fashion possible, and make sure that we take that information and we continue to give it out to the people that are coming behind us because they need it the most. The smart cuts, not the shortcuts. A lot of gems in this episode, man. So I don't know what else to give people to make sure that they are paying attention to all the things that we've given out. But hopefully, as we are giving our gifts this year, they walk away with some of these gifts and they understand how to take on and conquer 2022 the right way, Brother Jones.
I would hope so. And they should not be remiss and forget that these were just interviews that we had, that we laid out. So go back, do your dilly-dally, do your research, and listen to the variety shows.
That's when we're giving them the real spice.
That's when you really get to see what you're missing out on. right? So go back, listen to those episodes, but also make sure you tap into these gems that people are picking up so you can put your best foot forward. You can do that two-step, that tango, that whatever it is you need to do to 2022.
That's exactly it, man. Now, Kyle, these are all the things that we accomplished in 21. Is there anything that you in particular are looking forward to do in 2022?
Get paid, motherfucker!
That's exactly it. Once again, it's been another fantastic episode of Off the Strength. I'm a trainer called Tony.
I am KR Jones.
That is CTC Before You See Me. We'll talk to y'all next time. What's good, everybody? I'm a trainer called Tony, and I am here from the infamous Off the Strength podcast, asking you today, listeners, viewers, wherever you may be, to please like, listen, and subscribe to our podcast. This is how we're going to continue to be able to deliver you the best goddamn wellness information out here. So if you want to keep hearing this and you want us to keep growing, you are a part of this show just as much as anything else. So please go to offthestrength.com. Make sure you check out our blogs. Make sure you check us out on IG. And if you're hearing this voice and you didn't hit that subscribe button, know that Kyle is going to come looking for you.
You got that right.